Aloha. Happy New Year, everyone. Let's have a great meeting.
Commissioner Hippolito.
Good morning. Aloha, everyone. Happy New Year.
Thank
Good
you.
to see everyone again.
Same to you. And Vice Chair Polly.
Hi, good morning. I am so sad I'm not there in person, but I did catch a cold. So in respect for my fellow commissioners, I am home today.
Well, thank you. I hope you feel better. And Commissioner Lizzi is excused. So our next order of business is to introduce our new planning director. So Kathleen, please introduce yourself so everyone knows who you are.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kathleen Ross Aoki. I have been appointed your acting director until I'm confirmed by the county council. For those of you, most of you know me. I've been in the department for 20 years, government for almost 30 years. I worked in the plan implementation division. Most recently, I've worked in the current division and I worked in the long range division. So I kind of know a little bit about a little bit and a little bit of everything. So, but not a lot. And I've sort of been out of the loop with Planning Commission. So happy to be here today. It should be a relatively easy meeting, which is good for a first day. And I look forward to working with all of you. Mahalo.
Thank you, Director. Our next order of business is to let everyone know that on the agenda, item C has been deferred. We will pick that up again February 14th. The 14th. So happy Valentine's Day. So with that being said, please know that during public testimony, you will be allowed 3 minutes to testify. When that 3 minutes is up, you will be notified, and we ask that you please honor that time frame. Excuse me. Many times commissioners have additional questions or ask you to complete what you're saying, but in deference to everyone, please make sure that you keep it to the 3 minutes. So mahalo for that. Please notify in the chat function that you would like to testify, and I ask that you please do not notify any of the members of the commission personally in the chat function. It is not to be used for testimony, just to say, I would like to testify. So thank you so much for that. If there is an interruption, because technology is not always perfect, we may have to defer the meeting. Hopefully that won't happen, but just to let you know, that is a possibility because of our technology issues. So having said that, questions? Nope. Commissioner Polly.
I just want to say welcome to Kathleen Aoki. I am stoked for you. I'm excited for you, and we're here to support you and work together well.
Mahalo.
Thank you. I think we all echo those sentiments. So, yeah, Mr. Hippolito.
Chair, just wanted to mention that I'm alone in my office in Kahului.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Polly.
Yes, thank you, Mel. Yes, I am home alone as well. And gosh, I can't help but hear myself. I sound like a man. I'm so sorry, you guys.
No, you don't. No, you don't. You're good on that one. And Commissioner Freitas, please tell me where you are and with whom you are.
Yes, I am at home alone. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Commissioner Hippolito, for picking up on that. Okay, with that, I will send to the director for introduction of item number B on our agenda.
All right, members, today, unfinished business, we have the proposed amendments to Title MC12, Department of Planning, Subtitle 02, Maui Planning Commission, Chapter 202, Special Management Area Rules, and proposed amendments to Title MC-12, Department of Planning, Subtitle 02, Maui Planning Commission, Chapter 203, Shoreline Rules for the Maui Planning Commission. So we have staff here today, Candace Thackerson and Tara Miller Owens, to give us an update on the, and Russ Quire. Sorry, Russ, I didn't see you back there. Oh, sorry, Bradshaw. I'm getting you guys all mixed up. To give us an update.
Thank you. Ms. Thackerson?
Aloha mai kako. Candace Thackerson, Environmental Planning Supervisor for the current division. Kathleen, did you want to do public testimony first, or did you want to do a brief update from?
That's my call now.
Oh, okay. Chair, would you like to do?
I would like to have you please do
Okay.
your presentation, and then I will ask, because sometimes those questions are answered.
Sure. Perfect. I'm going to just do a brief overview, especially for the new commissioner, Blaine Apo, just so that you're, on board with everything that's going on. So we have been working diligently for several years now, the planning department, on amending our existing SMA and shoreline rules. As times change and as we see with global warming and climate change occurring, which Tara so kindly reminded me that it's actually Climate Change Week this week. And so they're meeting on Honolulu and things to discuss these exact types of issues. So it's very important. So as that's happening, we're seeing things, we're seeing sea level rise, we're seeing properties get more affected by it. And so I think we're required by state law now to take into consideration sea level rise. So with our setbacks, so we're proposing to increase the setback in some areas and using the best available science. It's this red erosion hazard line that you can see on a sea level rise map. We are also trying to streamline some of the rules. They're outdated. Some of the definitions are outdated. And some of our procedures, as we've been using them over the years, we've realized could really be streamlined. So that's what we're doing. We've had a couple cracks at it here at the commission. We've done a couple meetings. There's lots of public testimony. I just wanted to remind the commissioners and as well any of the public on the call that, back in 2019, we did send mailers out to every single shoreline property owner. So they did receive a mailer. Some businesses have come forward and said, this is the first time we've heard of it. And it could be potentially because they don't own the underlying property. Sometimes business owners are just the leasee or the tenant of the space when we did send it to the owners. We held 4 meetings in person. This was pre-COVID. Kihei on November 14th, 2019, 53 people attended. Wailuku on November 20th, 2019, 18 people attended. Paia on December 4th, 2019, 48 people attended. And in Lahaina, we held a meeting on December 13th, 2019, and 68 people attended. Okay. The most recent update was that the commission had suggested that we come together with a working group because we did have so many people from the community with various opinions and they wanted to be involved in it so that the planning department's not just kind of doing it on our own. We did start the draft, but we created a working group. There were many, many different names of people that wanted to be involved in the group. But as we all know, especially with the commission here, it's hard to get a lot of people in the same room at the same time with different schedules. So we had the group down to just 9 people. We met 4 times since we've last seen you for a total of approximately 11 hours. And I believe we've made substantial progress towards a compromise. We just need some more time to really hammer it out, but it's actually coming together. We started off very far apart, the 2 different sides, but I believe after doing this, it's really coming together. The last few parts, though, are the most important parts because that's the ones that we are sticking on. So I think that's why it's really important that we just have some more time to talk things through. I also wanted to mention, because I had heard in some of the public testimony recently about how this affects small businesses. So I just had a few talking points quickly about that. We did want to say that, the certified shoreline right now, when you apply for a shoreline setback approval, it's required to have a certified shoreline survey. This can cost thousands of dollars and take a long time. So the department is asking to make that optional at the discretion of the department. If someone's wanting to replace their carpet or paint a building, we're thinking maybe we don't need to certify that shoreline area. So that would actually help small businesses. That cost wouldn't be placed on them. We also created some no-need categories for things like maybe replacing your carpet or your cabinets, where really what is the effect to the shoreline area. So we'd like them to not even have to come in and do a permit for that or do assessment for that. So that also helps the small businesses. I don't think a lot of them are even aware right now that those things do trigger an assessment. They may even be doing it without knowing. So it would be nice to then they can do that without having any enforcement issues or anything like that.
Sorry to interrupt. We've lost audio about 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, but it has to go through there.
Yeah. Yeah. Commissioners Polly, Hippolito, Kavika, can you hear
I can
me?
hear you now. Yeah,
You
you're
can
back
hear
on
me now.
but we lost about 2 minutes.
Sure. So which part was I last leaving off on?
I heard that you just were finishing up the no needs and moving on to something else, and I don't know what it was.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So I had said that under the current rules, we don't, the planning department's current rules don't allow for repair or renovation without a variance for legal nonconforming structures in the shoreline setback. So under the proposed rules, we're not only giving them some no need categories, but we're also allowing them a means to get an assessment for those. So we believe that these rules will actually support some of the smaller businesses that are closer to the shoreline, as long as they're not getting damaged by, chronic coastal hazards or things like that. But this will at least give them some way to take care of their wear and tear on their properties. So I just wanted to mention that. So, but really the crux of the matter here is that we beg the commission for a little more time for the working group to finish. We think we're making substantial progress. We didn't squander the time. It was a little hard over the holidays, but we thank your indulgence. And we're not sure we have some dates here that we could propose, but of course it's going to be up to the commission's schedule. If we were to do it on the next meeting, which would be the 24th, the only problem with that is that we're obviously not done, right? The working group. So we would need more time. We probably wouldn't be done until the 20th. And then that gives you, we would post it Monday. That only gives you 1 day to review it, and the public, right? We want to kind of avoid that. We want to be able to be finished and have them be able to be posted so that people can read them and review them. We met and we recommended the date of February 7th, which would be a special meeting should the commission want to do that, because I have here the calendar for the availability for this room too, because we share this room with many other departments. But that's up to you. Obviously, the commission is what you want to do. If you will please grant us an extension, and then from there, what date you would like us to bring these back before you.
Thank you, Ms. Thackerson.
Yeah, thank you.
Tara, have you anything to add? No? Okay. Wes, do you have anything to add? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, at this juncture, I will call for public testimony. If you're interested in testifying on this matter, please step forward. There doesn't seem to be anyone in the, oh, there is someone in the gallery. Thank you, Caroline. Miss Woods. Okay, thank you. And Mr. Robinson, please step forward, say your name. You have 3 minutes.
Good morning, Chair, Commissioners, Planning Director. My name is Eric Robinson. I will testify truthfully today. I thank you for the opportunity to provide additional testimony in these rules. Since this commission last met, its working group has made substantial progress on refining the proposed amendments to the SMA and Shoreline rules. They've addressed a number of concerns that have been raised by the public, and while they've made a lot of progress, as Ms. Thackerson pointed out, additional work is still needed to finish these refinements. Adopting them today would have the impact of potentially doing more harm than good, so I think it's appropriate for the working group to have more time to make these refinements. They've spent a lot of time refining the provisions on allowable repairs in the shoreline area. This is an essential provision because what it does is it basically prevents potentially the impact of having properties that are forced to fall into disrepair and dilapidation. That's in nobody's best interest. If we're going to take them out, we need to take them out thoughtfully, and we need to do it methodically. And if we're going to keep them there, we need to make sure they're maintained so they can still serve their purpose and not be doing more harm than good. Additional work is also needed on the no needs and on the setbacks. No needs were removed. I think restoring them to the extent that it is consistent with HRS 205A allows the planning department to focus its effort on the big issues. So to the extent that it is consistent, I would ask that the working group continue working to add those back in. And finally, using the 3.2 foot erosion hazard line to establish setbacks for all development. I think it goes too far. That has real-world implications immediately in terms of making structures non-conforming and basically decides what can and cannot be done for them. I understand that this is a big sticking point and consensus likely won't be reached, but I nonetheless highlight the issue and highlight that from my prior testimony. I think using sea level rise projections that are based 75 years in the future from a scenario that's now considered considerably less likely and only useful as a high-end, high-risk scenario for all structures isn't entirely appropriate. It might make sense for publicly funded structures, but it's not necessarily appropriate for private structures. It might be appropriate in the future, and there's nothing to stop this commission from further refining these amendments and these rules when appropriate triggers are reached. So if we start seeing real-world indications that sea level rise is meeting these targets consistent with a given scenario, I think it would be appropriate for the commission to further refine setbacks in those ground or in that way in the future. There's middle ground. This isn't an all or nothing thing. So in closing, I thank the commission again for the opportunity to provide testimony. Now I'd ask that they allow the working group additional time to complete its work.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Commissioners, Commissioner Pauly.
Hi, yes, thank you for your testimony. I wrote the quote that you said, the no needs, they were removed. That's a reason you need more time. Can you further clarify that?
So as I understand, there were a number of no needs that were removed over concerns that they exceeded the authority granted to the planning director under 205A. I think some of them can be added back in that are consistent with that. And as I understand, the working group has been working to get some of those put back in so that the planning department's resources can be focused on the big issues.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any other clarifying questions? Commissioner Dikos.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Robinson, for your testimony. A question regarding, I know this is a sticking point for a lot, is the best available science. And a lot of folks are saying it's not a good model. There's flaws in the model. Can you clarify why you think, because I believe the state's using it, Kauai is using it, the Office of Climate, Conservation and Coastal Land, it's sort of the best available science we have to project what's going to happen with sea level rises.
Sure, and thank you for that question, Commissioner Dikos. It is the best available science in terms of modeling, as I understand, but that doesn't mean it's infallible. It's based on a singular sea level rise scenario to make all of its projections, and there are a multitude of scenarios that are available. And the one that it really hones in on, and I won't belabor this because it gets into super technical jargon, but it's based on RCP 8.5. So this is it's a sea level rise projection that's based on global warming and greenhouse gas emissions. And the current international community is coming out and saying that that's no longer the best case scenario. I understand there's competing science coming out from NOAA that seems to be what the sea level rise viewer and the state is gravitating towards, but it's not an end all be all. The science is constantly updating and being refined and improved. So I would offer that there are alternatives as well.
Okay, I'm not sure that there's a lot of, what alternative are you referring to? The existing model?
So there are alternative sea level rise scenario projections. I think something like RCP 6.0 or 4.5 or even just somewhere along those means that are considered intermediate under the international nomenclature. So that would be the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or the IPCC. I think there's potentially some confusion because NOAA uses similar naming conventions. So they use intermediate to describe the middle ground of their scenarios, but what's intermediate under NOAA and what's intermediate under the IPCC aren't the same. They're two different things.
Okay, because the NOAA intermediate is 4 feet now, right? Or 3.9, is that?
I believe that is the regional projection, correct?
And you're saying, and the model right now has 3.2. What is the IPCC intermediate model? And I know there's a lot of them, but.
So if I recall off the top of my head, they've changed their scenario names to SSPs, or shared socioeconomic pathways. I believe the middle ground is 4.5. They've got a range in there. SSP 4.5 is the name, and it projects. I'd have to actually pull that up and get that back to you, but happy to provide that via follow-up testimony.
Okay. Because my understanding is the 3.2 that's in the model now was the extreme from, I can read, this is directly from, I think it says.
Excuse me, Commissioner Dicos, that would be testifying. So please keep it to clarifying questions. Thank you.
Okay, good point. All right, I appreciate it. And hopefully we can clarify the science a little bit later. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Anyone else have questions for Mr. Robinson? Commissioner Freitas.
Sorry, is that Mr. Robinson or Mr. Robertson?
Robinson.
Hi, Mr. Robinson. So you're one of the members that were in part of the group that talked to the planning department?
I am not on the working group, if that's your question, Commissioner.
Yeah, that's what I was asking. You're not on the group.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Freitas. Check and see anyone else in the gallery who would like to testify on this item.
Thank you.
Please state your name. You have 3 minutes.
Aloha, Commissioners. My name is Lahela Aiwohi, and I am here to testify. Well, actually, first I am here to testify on the agenda item. And I do want to thank Candace, who gave a very thorough update on where we're at with the working group and summarizing basically what we've been covering. I am here to request that this this be deferred back to the working group to provide the time needed to bring back or present to the commissioners some more viable and doable set of proposed rules. I believe that the working group in the last month, since our last meeting last month, we've met 3 times, and in those 3 times, the working group has been very successful in making some progress, as you heard Ms. Dackerson state. I believe that, maybe 1 to 2 more meetings, we should be complete. Like I said, that the working group we've been working very, very hard. Unfortunately, I wasn't at the last 2 meetings due to some unforeseen circumstances that I had to attend. But I believe that the working group is making a lot of progress. They are moving in the right direction. And given the time, a little more time, we'll be able to bring back a good report to the commissioners for the commissioners to review. But I do also want to recommend that there be given some time so that we can go back to the community and actually have some focus groups so that the community and the stakeholders in our community are able to understand what's going on. It's been such a fluid set of rules, as you guys all know, sitting here. It's been so fluid that we need to provide the opportunity to engage with the community. I believe that in December's commission hearing, we did hear quite a few people state that there wasn't enough education and not enough information provided by the county. And I feel that being part of the working group, it is part of our responsibility that once we are able to come back with the kind of final set of proposed rules, that we take that back out to the community, meet with the community, and have these small focus groups, whether it be through the advisory boards, and start from there. But again, that's just a start. But be able to meet with all the major stakeholders, be able to meet with our private owners that will be impacted by this change or by the rules. I feel that that's very important. And that is part of my job that I do. And I'm not just a lobbyist. I believe that community organizing and community engagement goes hand in hand with lobbying. So I do feel that we do need that extra time or that additional time to get out to the community to provide that opportunity or that education and information. And so, thank you.
Commissioners, have you any clarifying questions for the testifier? Commissioner Freitas.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Aiwohi, you said you were in 2 meetings since our last meeting. Were you in any of the previous meetings?
Yes. Aloha, Commissioner Matos. But yes, I was in prior meetings. I was in 1 meeting with the working group. There was 3 meetings. And I believe the last 2 meetings was about 4 meetings. Thank you, Candace. And the last couple meetings was beyond 3 to 4 hours, I believe. So this is a very good structured working group, and we all have the same thing in mind, getting to a completion and getting that final task done. But yes, a short answer.
Thank you. Before I pass it back to you, Chair, can I ask you, Chair, that whoever testifies today, instead of me asking this question to every testifier, if they were part of the working group and how many meetings did they attend, please?
I will do that. Thank you, Commissioner Freitas. Appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
Any other questions, commissioners? Seeing none, Nahale, mahalo.
Mahalo.
Is there anyone else in the gallery who would like to testify?
Morning, Chair, members. Cal Chipchase. To Commissioner Freitas' question, I am on the working group and I attended all of the meetings. I can't. To echo in part what has been said today, I think we have made good progress with respect to reaching compromise over the course of our meetings. One example of that is the discussion over whether to use the 3.2-foot modeling or to use actually the Kauai modeling, Commissioner Dekos. Commissioner Dekos, Kauai does not use 3.2 for its shoreline setback. It uses a 70 times erosion plus 60 feet, which is a model that I had advocated for a long time. Through the working group discussions, I believe we've reached a compromise to propose to the Commission to use the 3.2 foot, but not to add an additional 40-foot buffer, recognizing that that projection goes out 80 years or nearly 80 years now and should be sufficient without an additional buffer. We have also made a lot of progress with respect to the rules governing existing structures, looking at it from the perspective of how the structure may be damaged and what kind of work may be appropriate depending on the damage, the scale of the work. We've also made strides in making sure people are aware of this discussion and of the rules. Through the council members, we tried to reach out to all of their constituents in an email that went to each council member. We have contacted nearly everyone who testified at the prior hearing, as well as many industry, trade, other groups, and individual homeowners. I think that that outreach is important, to echo Ms. Aiwohi and other testifiers, and I think that that will continue if we're allowed additional time for the working group. I would say, in my view, having attended all of the meetings, and some of them quite lengthy meetings, I don't think that we'll have enough time to bring the rules back to you with a meaningful amount of time for them to be published before the meeting on January 24th. And so I would ask for a little additional time. I think that that time has been and will continue to be well spent. Commissioner Polly, you'd asked about the no needs that were taken out. There were a series of no needs in the SMA rules that the department took out, as Mr. Robinson explained, believing that they weren't justified as no needs under 205A-22. I think they are justified, and we're looking at a way to compromise to bring them back. Not all members of the working group believe they should be reincorporated into the rules, and so we're looking at a way that we might be able to reach a compromise position on them as well. There's some other small things like the definition of ground disturbing activity, under what circumstances is it appropriate for a property to be exempted from or use a different metric than the 3.2, such as elevation, non-erodible substrate, a protected structure, and whether more lenient rules for critical public infrastructure, protecting walls and other protective measures that guard critical public infrastructure is appropriate. I think that we can continue to work.
As chair, I will ask you to finish your comment because I know one of my commissioners will ask you, so I'll just jump in.
Very good, Chair. I think that we can continue to work through that and reach a compromise on most, maybe not everything, but most things. And the things that we don't, we would come back and present alternative proposals as to particular provisions if we aren't able to compromise. So thank you for the time that you've given us and the time you've given me today. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chipchase. Commissioners? Clarifying questions? Commissioner Freitas and then Commissioner Dekos.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Chipchase, I understand there's 10 meetings that was held, and if you were at all of them, the last meeting that we had, you shared these same concerns, and you had 4 more meetings to either come to some kind of set agreement or whatever to make those changes. Is this request to extend for more time just to keep pushing your agenda and what you want, even though the county has clearly made it after 10 years, they're set in what they have put in this new rule? Is this a way for you to extend just so you can just have the planning department just say, oh, forget it, or just give this guy what he wants?
I wish I had that kind of influence, Commissioner Freitas. Sadly, I don't. To be clear, the working group itself has met 3 times, and I've attended 4 times. So Candace tells me 4 times. I've attended all of them, and I've also been the principal manager of the draft that we circulate in advance of the meetings and then discuss it with appropriate track changes. Far from getting everything that I want, to highlight that compromise I mentioned, I've been an advocate for using the Kauai model for shoreline setbacks, 70 times the annual erosion rate plus 60 feet. I feel that actually is the appropriate model, and I think there are some legal issues with using 3.2 as the de facto shoreline. I've conceded on that, and I have accepted using 3.2 as the shoreline, and we've compromised by dropping the 40 feet that the department had initially proposed in its set of rules. And so I offer that, Commissioner Freitas, as an example of a significant compromise between the parties' respective positions in a way that has advanced the rules into a form that we are much closer to being able to come back to you in unison or near unison at a subsequent meeting.
Okay. Thank you for that answer. I have one more question.
Sure.
You said you had all of the meetings, then you said 3, but Ms. Thackerson said there was 4, but I'm talking about the others prior to our last meeting. There were several meetings. Were you at all of those as well?
I was, and so Ms. Thackerson corrected me. It was 4 since the last commission meeting, and I've been at all of those. I was also at all of the working group meetings prior to the last commission meeting.
So that's about 10, I believe. Is that
I'll trust your math, Commissioner.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for your response.
You're very welcome.
Commissioner Dicos, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Chipchase, for all the time you've put into this and all the meetings and all the testimony. Appreciate it. I think you did answer one of my questions. So you said you have agreed to the 3.2 without the 40-foot set addition.
Yes, Commissioner.
And keeping the language of best available science. So if the models are updated, that the erosion hazard line moves with the best available science?
So the department had actually changed that definition before the last meeting. So maybe even before the last 2 meetings. So the rules don't automatically change the setback line depending on the best available science because they couldn't. That would be illegal to sort of adopt a rule that shifts over time. It would have to be brought back to the commission for consideration and adoption. That definition is part of the work that we have done, and I think we've either agreed on it or we're very close to agreeing on the definition.
Okay, so just to be clear, it references best available science, but it would have to come back to commission to change the 3.2 to whatever.
I believe that is correct.
The change. Okay. Well, that's certainly good news. I think that's all I had. Thank you. Appreciate
You're welcome.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Dicos. Commissioners, any other questions for Mr. Chipchase? I have some. Do you have another? Go ahead.
Just a quick clarification. When I was referring to the Kauai, I know Kauai doesn't use it for their setback, but they use the Slerexa for their flooding models. That's what I was referring to.
They treat it like flood inundation, and
Right.
so they deal with it through elevation.
Right. Just clarifying.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So, Mr. Chipchase, the working group that has been assembled, can you please give me an idea of who those members are and what industries they represent, please?
Absolutely.
Thank
So Nishiki and her attorney, Christina Lizzi, and they've been sort of representing a more community-focused or shoreline advocate, maybe Kai might describe herself as, perspective. Ms. Aiwohi, myself, and Chris Conger have represented, I represent hotel industry, Ms. Aiwohi does too. I have many other clients, but all in the private sector. And then Chris Conger, of course, is with Sea Engineering and brings a scientific perspective. He's also been an advocate of the model as an overlay for SMA, but not for shoreline setbacks. And so he's offered that perspective and some other technical support in our meetings. And then we have the planning department staff who have been fairly consistent throughout the meeting, Wes, Tara, Candace. And then Michelle McLean, of course, was serving on the working group as the director during her time in office. She has continued to volunteer her time since leaving office on January 1st or 2nd.
Thank you. That gives us a good idea of the base.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that very much. Any other questions? Mr. Chipchase, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Hey, anyone else in the gallery like to testify? Please step forward, introduce yourself. You have 3 minutes.
Aloha, my name's Thorne Abbott with Coastal Planners. I promise to tell the truth. First off, thank you very much for your civic engagement and volunteerism. I know you got a big, thick stack of paperwork to look through every week. I was not on the working group, although I'm very, very familiar with these rules. I actually helped amend HRS 205A in the past. I've been very involved in applying these rules for the last 15 to 20 years. Within the committee, I'm very happy that the committee was formed and that you have a Hawaiian activist and you have a lawyer for hotels collaborating and coming to consensus with one another. But I would like to point out, as Cal has mentioned, that none of those individuals actually apply for and have processed coastal permits in Maui County or at the state level. Now, Chris Conger would be familiar somewhat with those processes because he worked at DLNR at one time. I do think, as Cal has mentioned, Kauai does use this Larexa, the 3.2 model, and they use that as a design standard overlay. And I also support that idea that if you're going to build in harm's way, if you're going to build in a place we have a good idea is going to get wet, you probably ought to design a little differently so that when you do get wet, it doesn't damage your building. That's just common sense, and that's good science. I don't think that the existing shoreline setback should be thrown out. I think that should be retained, if not expanded. Also revised, of course, for the 40-foot minimum setback in state law. Waivers of the certified shoreline survey, I think those should actually be expanded, and the director should be given greater discretion in doing that. One of the problems is if you're going to do a dune restoration project, you have to go get a state certified shoreline survey. Well, you're allowed to do dune restoration. We want to do dune restoration, but having that extra step to go through can be very troublesome and can make a project much longer. So for things that are clearly allowed, the director should be allowed to waive the shoreline survey for that. Minor structures and activities are defined in your rules very explicitly with some criteria. There's also criteria 12-203-9. I'm sorry, 12-203-12A9, which gives the director discretion to make decisions on minor structures and minor activities. That has criteria in it as well. There's no point in putting criteria in a rule or a law if you don't give the director the discretion to use that criteria. Right now, the way the rules are written, they're very explicit in what a minor structure or minor activity is. So it defeats the purpose of having that criteria in the rules. So I recommend you broaden the definition somewhat to rely on the criteria, provide the director that discretion, but also have those reported to the commission
3 minutes.
for transparency. Thank you very much for your time. I'd be glad to answer any other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Abbott. Commissioners, have you any questions for Mr. Abbott? Commissioner Deacos.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Mr. Abbott, for all the work you've done on these SMA rules. So you're advocating to not use the 3.2 as a setback regulatory tool. Is that correct?
I'm advocating that you use it as a regulatory tool for design standards. So how you're going to build, not necessarily that you cannot build, but that you have to build in a certain way. This is very similar to the FEMA flood program. It's nationally recognized, nationally adopted.
Okay, kind of like, so the way Kauai uses it.
Very similar to Kauai, although their situation's very different than ours.
Right, and I was speaking to the Kauai folks just to figure out how they're viewing what we're doing based on all the stuff they did, and I guess their erosion rates are nowhere near what ours were. I was told that their setbacks under their model are actually more landward than they would be through the Slorexa, so they didn't see an advantage of using the Slorexa. That's what I was told by somebody there. So the downside of using Slorexa, the erosion hazard line, is what exactly for as a regulatory tool?
I think the rules so far have been very effective at treating new structures over the past 15 years, to keeping them out of harm's way. I think ignoring that good science of the Slorexa would be very foolish on part of the commission. I think getting rid of the current shoreline setback creates additional problems in addition to just the word shoreline, because the shoreline has a very specific term in state law. Also, it would get rid of the state certified shoreline survey process, which is actually pretty valuable for different reasons. There's 3 reasons to get a state certified shoreline survey. One is to say, whose permit do I get? Do I get a state permit or do I get a county permit? The second reason is to measure your shoreline from that as a baseline. And then the third and most important one for GLNR is it highlights any encroachment. So in case somebody's irrigating the beach to grow their alpaca down the beach, that's when you discover it, when you have that state certified shoreline survey. Or they've gone out and they've added to their seawall by adding some boulders or some rocks. We don't know that until we do that state certified shoreline survey, and then you can't move forward in the permitting process until you resolve that encroachment with GLNR. So that's why I think it's important to retain that.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm saying don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Right, but it sounds like it's more of an inconvenience. Like if you apply it to the erosion, if you use the erosion hazard line, it casts a very large net, and it can bog down. But of course, if everybody has to do a certified shoreline survey, that also, maybe that doesn't bog down the planning department. That just bogs down the applicant. Is that?
I don't think you should necessarily require a state certified shoreline survey in every case, because yes, it does bog down the process quite a bit, especially for things we want to do, like dune restoration or minor interior renovations to an existing condo that's right next to the shoreline. That would also need a state certified shoreline survey. I think the current erosion rates, the erosion rate formula for the shoreline setback, 50 times the annual erosion hazard rate, plus a buffer of 25, should be expanded. I think you should preserve that under the current shoreline rules and allow that to continue as it has effectively for the last 15 years, and add an extra layer, which is the sea level rise exposure area. And in that additional overlay, there should be limitations on how you build and what you can build and where you can build.
Great, thank you, Mr. Abbott.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Commissioners, further questions for Mr. Abbott? Commissioner Pauly.
Yes, I just have a clarifying question. Mr. Abbott, in your testimony, you mentioned you think we should broaden the definition in criteria where the director has discretion. Can you just confirm if you're referring to the SMA rules or the shoreline setback rules? Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that question. Very good. I'm referring to 12-203-12A9, which is in your shoreline rules, and 12-203-4, which is the definition of minor structure, and separately the definition of minor activity. And so those are things I think you should change. And while I'm
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abbott. Anyone else? Seeing none? Thank you.
May I ask, did you receive my written testimony? in
Yes,
time?
we did.
You did.
Thank you.
Okay. Mahalo nui for your time. Thank you.
Appreciate very much. Okay. Seeing no one else in the gallery who is wanting to testify, I will be calling on those on blue jeans. First up is Pamela Tumpap. Please unmute yourself, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you so much. Excuse me for just a moment. There we go. Okay. Aloha, and thank you all for your time and tremendous investment on this issue. I really appreciate the question on asking who was involved in the working meeting. We heard about these working groups and understood that they were meeting with then Director Michelle McLean. And we expressed, and I know others expressed, a willingness to serve. Unfortunately, we never got a call back. So after we realized that there was a deferral on the December 13th meeting, and it seemed like we weren't going to be included in what those working groups might be, feeling that many were not included in the process or aware of the process still, and seeing that the hotels were well represented, we decided to put together a working group on our own. The Chamber felt it would be valuable to educate people we'd reached out to and found that they were not clear or informed about how the progress had been made on the process. And they're affected entities that really would be impacted by the proposed SMA and Shoreline rules. So we convened a group to review them. Our group met on December 28th for 5 hours to review the modeler, go through the rules section by section. During that time frame, the group got through page 202-17 on the SMA rules alone after 5 hours and looking at the modeler briefly and sharing some overviews and quick questions on whether they'd been familiar with the process. So we felt these topics were really important and needed further discussion. At our working group, people were really surprised. And if you, I hope you've gotten our testimony and we've provided recommendations. But we had David Arakawa from the Land Use Research Foundation, Howie Kihuni, who's a developer. We had Angela Leone, who works with condominiums, Sneh Patel, Lahaina Town Action Committee, Bud Pacrone, Wailea Community Association, Joe Pluto, West Maui Taxpayers Association, Kara Scoffings, who's with the construction industry of Maui and a construction company, and Brian Yano, representing retail industry, all of whom saw major impacts. They felt this issue is very broad, and they strongly believed the matter should be deferred, which seems you'll have a great support for that today. As we heard during testimony during the meetings, they just don't feel appropriate notification was given, and I think we need to look at doing something better. And we did recognize in part, we recognized what was said by the planning department that often many are lessees, not landowners. So that's a huge impact, but they're going to be impacted. We also saw many challenges with economic models. And so in our testimony, we share ways that we think you can reach out to people in a broader way, looking at multimedia platforms and various media, but also we need to start educating people on these modelers where they start to get a visual sense of what is actually happening. We believe that we have to look at this holistically.
3 minutes.
Okay, my apologies. I'll defer, I guess, to my written testimony and our recommendations.
Thank you, Ms. Tumpap. Commissioners, questions from Commissioner Thayer?
Thank you. Do you think in 1 or 2 sentences you could sum up the rest of what you're going to say?
Yes, thank you so much. I mean, I guess the first sentence would be that we feel that this matter has to be looked at holistically, like with COVID. It was a health crisis and social crisis along with an economic crisis. This is an environmental crisis along with an economic crisis. So we think we need to look at it holistically. Our second point is when you involve broader people impacted, you get better results and suggestions, such as ways to relieve the county from some of the concerns about being held accountable for allowing people to continue to invest in their property, and then later there might be damage, but also to protect or make them bond some of their properties so that if their property falls into the ocean, the taxpayers don't have to foot the bill. If you can review our recommendations and the rest of my testimony, I think you can see that broader outreach gets better suggestions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tumpap. Commissioners? Commissioner Pauly.
Thank you, Pamela, for your testimony. And I want to ask this question because I think it's a fair question, but in no way is it intended to be a jab but I think just based on the last several years of me being a commissioner, it's sometimes a question we have when we do hear testifiers to say, hey, we need more input. And so, and an honest question, it's an honest question for an honest answer. So hearing the staff and seeing the timeline of how long they've been working on this, I think we had like 10 years, there might have been like even as long as 12 years, like this wasn't kind of sprung up on us or the community. And so, you know, the other thing that's kind of hard for a commissioner is, you know, I can see where applicants do huge effort when it's an application to get the message out. But the reality is some people just aren't tuned in. They don't read the paper, they don't watch the news, they don't check their mail, they don't check their email, they don't go to the county website. And so when we hear, oh, I didn't know, that's rough for us too, because we all have an obligation. It's a two-part obligation. The applicant, or in this case, the department had an obligation to, you know, somehow put it out there, but the community has an obligation to pay attention. And so the fair question is, I hear what you're saying and I love what you're saying. However, since we know this has been in the work for almost 10 years, what happened? Did it sneak up on you? Were you just busy with other topics and just didn't see this one? Like, kind of just bring me to where it makes sense that it snuck up. Because what's really devastating and hard for the department and, you know, working hours and us listening to it days and days and days, hours and hours and hours, even going through the document in a 6-hour special meeting on another day off that I had to as a volunteer, you know, forego my work, forego being a mom, forego being a community service and other aspects to listen only for it to be chalked because now we want a working group. My question is, like, what happened? How did it sneak up on you guys?
Well, I really appreciate the question. And I know under the vein, I've seen your work and I've been watching you work long hours when you need to leave and still struggling to stay. To be honest with you, I remember hearing about this over 2 years ago. And we got involved. And at that time, there was the renovation happening at the Maui Loo, right? There was a whole new structure being put up. There was some concern about what was happening then. And there was some work that we had done on that way back when, and then we were not seeing any notices anymore of that. But what was interesting is when we convened our group, you've got two people representing the construction industry. One of the two who knew this was being worked on but didn't understand. They were actually in we asked what time frame. They were in an 18-month time frame. And she could specifically point to that and is very involved in getting these permits and said they were not aware that this dime had moved this far. And so that was very concerning to all of us. The rest of the group, big community group, Lahela Community Association. I appreciated hearing today because we've been asking. We asked when the notice was sent out, and we heard 2 or 3 years ago. Today we understand it was 2019. That's a long time. And then we understand that the notice went to landowners, which totally makes sense. This is a landowner issue. We get that. I was glad to hear that. We surmised what was said today, that many of the impacted people don't know their leasees. And so we get that. But again, even in the big development arena, you had key people not knowing this had moved that far. And so that was very concerning. And when we started engaging that group, we started hearing other solutions that I hadn't even heard come up in terms of sitting through all these meetings with you afar from at home, but watching them till the end with you as you've been working very diligently. We don't want this to come across as we're trying to kick the can down the road. I think we've said that before. That's why we convened a working group like the others over the holidays. We spent a long time. We plan on doing more. But we wanted to get something before you And actually, I think that, it's important so that you can see what the outcome of a working group is, and not just summary that, but give you something to react to today so that you can see if you feel that what we're saying in terms of those who didn't know and some of the suggestions that have come out of the meeting, suggestions to look at other ways to relieve the county from liability and protect our community from having to put the expense of properties that fall into the ocean or, might fall into the ocean while still allowing property owners to use properties. We've tried to come up, again, it was a very short time frame. We too wanted to meet more, but we think it's important along the way to share the data.
Sorry for the interruption. I think you definitely answered the question. Thank you so much. And I think just moving forward, the goal is like, how do we try to bridge that gap? And so that's why it was important for me to ask that question. And thank you.
I appreciate the question.
And thank you for just jumping in and just making your own working group. Like, that is amazing. It's proactive. I appreciate that. But thank you for your service, and thank you for answering that question. And I feel like it's been answered well. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Pauly. Commissioner Thayer.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the testimony. And I echo Commissioner Pauly's words about, thank you for being proactive and gathering more voices from the community. I'm curious, how soon do you think you would be able to wrap everything up, and would you be able to give us like a packaged summary of your suggestions?
Well, I think as I listened to their testimony this morning, the challenges and what we were hoping for and had asked for with the planning department was to include broader voices so that we don't have independent groups working in a vacuum. And that we're all I think you have leverage time if you broaden out the working group so that you don't have, because then we can all work towards consensus. I know there was a lot of testimony by those involved previously that said we need to keep it very narrow and very focused, which we certainly tried to do, but you can see what our representation is and why we feel that's important. I think the more we operate separately, then you're going to have different versions where we might have a better shot with a broader group at coming together on a singular version that then can be reviewed by the Planning Commission. I think we got in 5 hours a long way, but also the group definitely felt like there needed to be a better understanding of the economic modeling because they could point to properties and say those valuations aren't even close.
Excuse me, Ms. Tumpap, please just answer the question.
Okay, I guess I would say I think we're hearing that some feel that they might be able to reconvene by February. I think we're feeling that it's going to take a little longer than that. But I think we've been looking at if it was a short, condensed, and the right people were brought to the table by summer. But that depends on how it moves forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thayer. Commissioner Dikos.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Tumpap, for your testimony and convening all those voices and spending that extra energy to get the view of the public. I just want to I have to remind myself often, there's a small paragraph on the front of the rules that says purpose, and the purpose describes the protection, preservation, and restoration of coastal resources and keeping people out of harm's way. It's a really short paragraph, but that's really the intent of the SMA rules and the shoreline rules. And I'm just curious how much of that was part of the discussion in this group, trying to address the purpose of these rules.
Actually, quite a bit, because I shared, many of them hadn't gotten to participate in the Planning Commission meetings, but some did and have been listening in or have been reviewing the videos. But we spent a lot of time talking about the rules and where the investment lines are, but beyond where the investment lines are, what's the harm to the environment? How do we protect the environment? How do we find that balance? between the economy and the environment. We understand that our visitor industry is based on a beautiful environment and we all live in and work here. So we did spend a lot of time looking at that and looking at ways to protect that and looking at ways to protect the environment and our community even while properties were being used. And if people wanted to make continued investment, that they could only be able to do it if they found certain protections for the environment and our community.
Okay, so given that we've lost 4.5 miles of beach since these rules went into effect, the existing rules, obviously that's not good for those property owners. So is there something that you would like to see in the new rules that avoids loss of coastal resources that you think
So within
is in the new rules, or that you would suggest?
I think some of it's already been suggested today, but within the 5 hours that we met, we didn't get through all of the rules. And so we shared where we kind of ended in our testimony. But I think the thing is that we didn't feel that we'd heard enough discussion on what some of the things that were brought up today, like there are ways to build differently. We're not talking about hardening of like the shoreline, but hardening of building structures, certain things that are possible, other mitigation measures, understanding that better as we move forward with this is something that each of the members of the group felt was important. We didn't feel like we had enough of some of the mitigation measures and also some of the environmental actions in terms of the modeler and how accurate it actually was. But we have, broad brush strokes, but we also felt that, again, like today, you're hearing testifiers that I think would be excellent resources.
Yes, Tumpap, please just stick to the question. We have several people waiting to testify, so please just answer the question.
I think you answered my question. Thank you, Chair.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. We appreciate your input, but at some point we just need to have the questions answered. Thank you.
I understand. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Our next testifier is Ms. Sharon Wright. Sharon, please come forward, unmute yourself, and you will have 3 minutes.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Happy New Year. My name is Sharon Wright. I promise to tell the truth. I was not involved in any of the current working groups, but I have participated for the last year with the planning department in the planning meetings and testified at the Planning Commission hearings and participated with all the past hearings. I was not contacted after the December meeting relative to participating in anything. So I'm suggesting 2 things. I'd like to request additional time so that I can reach out to one of the working groups and continue to make sure that my concerns for all of my clients, for all of us as a community, are addressed. I think a conduit of some sort needs to be generated for people to either look on the county website, planning department website, like we look at the rules that are published, to give people somebody to contact at the planning department or in the working groups. I completely agree with Commissioner Pauly that people need to do their own, they need to have initiative and get involved. They need to read and they need to want to be part of a group. It's amazing since some of our last meetings how many more people have come up. So the community is getting involved. And I would just like to request additional time to be able to participate and make sure some of the concerns that I have testified on are being addressed. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wright. Commissioners, clarifying questions for the testifier? I have one for you, please, Ms. Wright. Where do you reside, please?
We had an office in Wailuku. We recently moved it to home office. I'm in Haiku during the holidays. We were without power for 3 days. So there was a lot that went on between now and today's meeting, Christmas, outages.
So you're a resident. My question is, so you're a
Yes.
resident of Maui County?
Yes, I've been a resident for 25 years of Maui County.
Okay. Thank you. That's what I needed
Thank
to
you.
know. Appreciate very much.
Thanks.
Commissioners, any other questions? Seeing none, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Patricia Cadiz, will you please step forward, unmute yourself? You have 3 minutes.
Aloha. I'm trying to turn my camera on, but I guess it doesn't want to. My name is Patricia Cadiz. I'm certified by the Coastal Zone Foundation as a coastal practitioner. I have 25 years of involvement in North Shore Maui beach restoration projects, and I serve on the board of the Hawaii Shore and Beach Preservation Association. I'm representing myself today. I'm not a part of the working group. I promise to tell the truth, of course. I have to apologize. I've been involved in this for many years, but I've had about a 6-month, almost a year hiatus as I had to leave to take care of elders. So I'm back, and I apologize if I'm not completely up to speed. My concern today is about shoreline structures. I know that in many cases, shoreline structures can cause flanking and other problems that are deleterious to shoreline processes. And I have no problem with banning those kinds of applications. But I have 2 situations where I think that shoreline structures are actually advantageous to the purpose and goals of these rules, including protecting the safety and welfare of the public use and enjoyment of our coastal resources. One example would be a pocket beach. On a pocket beach setting that has no sand upland to erode to would result in eroding clay, maybe slippery, dangerous basalt boulders. And as we saw at Sugar Cove, when that happened around 1990, the cove became actually a dangerous situation for the public. But through the process of restoration, the safety issue has been addressed. The public use is wide and daily, and enjoyment of the coastal resources is enhanced by the project there. That project was a 2-part project. The first part was a shoreline structure. The shoreline structure extends the length of the cove, but because it's a pocket beach, there's no possibility of causing flanking on adjacent beaches. The pocket is defined by 2 natural rocky headlands, both upwind and downwind. So because the shoreline structure extends the length of the cove, there's no flanking problem to be had. It serves some beneficial uses as well. It keeps the sea from eroding the clay and causing turbidity. And it is
3 minutes.
Oh my goodness.
Goes quickly, doesn't it?
It sure does.
Thank you so much, Ms. Cadiz. Commissioners, have you additional questions, clarifying questions for the testifier? Ms. Cadiz, did you happen to send your testimony in?
No, I just got back, so I'm just barely getting my feet underneath me.
Okay. If you have it in writing, if you would please forward it to the Planning Commission pursuant to the address on the website, then
Okay.
it will get to the commission. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Our next testifier is Lucienne Dene. Ms. Dene, please step forward. There you are.
Good morning.
Go ahead, please. You have 3 minutes.
Beaming forward, my name is Lucienne Dine, and I'm not a lobbyist. Like many others here, I appreciate the long work that the Commission has thoughtfully put into this and the work of the working group. I, too, have been involved with this issue for years. I served on a working task force back in the early part, 20 years ago, the early part of the 2000s, when our then new setbacks of 25 feet plus 50 times the erosion rates were developed. That working group took about a year to, hear from all sides and come up with something we could live with, which were the most realistic and progressive regulations at the time in the state, and then other counties followed suit over time. I do support the working group having additional time to complete its work. I certainly support there being a outreach process where the public can know what's going on and these new recommendations digested. However, we do have some Planning Commission members who've sat through thick and thin here whose terms are going to expire in March, I believe, and I think we really need to come to a decision while these commission members are still sitting. I have not heard much about where traditional knowledge of our shoreline, where cultural use of our shoreline fits in. I know Kai and Christina are bringing up those points in the working group, but it seems like most of the other folks are just forgetting about that. Just personally, my experience, there's a shoreline trail in McKenna that many of us came to the Planning Commission to protect as part of the SMA permits that were granted to McKenna Resort. This trail is now partially underwater part of the time, and it really needs to be moved. And it's just a fact of life that things are changing and we need to adapt to them. And I am very, very supportive of us using not just the best science, but planning for the worst so that we're pleasantly disappointed if it doesn't happen. But planning for a short-sighted scenario is not going to help us. There's always a lot of pushback from property interests saying this will harm me, this will harm me. But property and the public trust need to meet somewhere, and that somewhere is the shoreline. So we really need to have that broader voice brought out in these discussions about the people who may not even know this is happening, but they go down to fish, and all of a sudden where they fish won't be available anymore because not enough protection was made for new buildings encroaching on the shoreline. So thank you for your consideration, and we really need to find the right balance here.
Thank you, Ms. Dene. Any clarifying questions from commissioners? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much for your time and testimony. Next up, we have Sneh Patel.
Thank you, Commissioners. Promise to tell the truth. Sneh Patel. I'm the president of Lahaina Town Action Committee. I also am a director for Maui Resort Rentals, where we manage properties along the shoreline. Been involved in the community for many years. I also serve on a board as well, boards and commission. I'm not representing that entity, but I understand where you folks are coming from, where you want to push something out. You're working hard on it and put your blood, sweat, and tears in it, and we're not getting paid for that, right? So you want to see a finish line there. One of the problem I have, and I am on the working group, as Pam mentioned, with the chamber. I was asked to be on it so that there could be a diversified voice as we're talking about these rules that will impact us for a very long time. For me, I feel like I was not part of the working group that the Planning Commission put together. I did not have any outreach for any sort of input. And I think the first time I heard about these rules taking effect was a couple of years ago, and we all know COVID kind of took its toll and maybe disconnected a few of us in the community from, giving our input. But I'd like to see a working group that fairly balances out the needs of the community, that's the whole community, the business community, the residents, as well as even the community that travels here, right? So right now I see that on the working group, the majority of the entity is hotel related. You have somebody that's even Honolulu based on that working group, not Maui resident even. So that's the thing. I mean, I think we've sent our recommendations in. On the community side, we put on events our organization does throughout the town, and anytime I need to put a pop-up tent up for one event, you got to put an SMA in. Well, I know that these rules exempt, at least the Shoreline rules and the SMA rules exempt some of the cultural activities, but there's also community activities that have been going on for 20, 30 years that I feel could be exempt because we don't change the plan, we keep the plan the same. So if we already had one SMA permit approved, we should just, be exempt from it unless I think our plans change considerably. So that would help, when we're putting on these events to not go through that extra step. So yeah, I think that you folks have worked hard at this. I know you're going to make your decision one way or the other, and support whatever you do. Hopefully we can get it extended though, so that more input can be given, and it could be a broader working group put together.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. First of all, let me tell you that the commission had nothing to do with assembling any working group. That was done with outside forces, if you will. So we had nothing to do with who's on it, when they meet, or anything else. So I just wanted to clear that up for the record. So commissioners, have you any clarifying questions for Mr. Patel? Okay, seeing none, I thank you so much for your time and testimony. The next testifier is one of our local Hawaiians. No name is given, so if you could please unmute yourself, you have 3 minutes.
Yo, what's up? Happy New Year. How you guys doing?
Hey, Junior, fine, thanks. Please introduce yourself. You have 3 minutes.
Junior Nako, Anakolai, our Lahaina residents, not part of no nothing. But being on canoe coach, over here in Lahaina for the Pili Canoe Club. I know you guys get all these groups you guys talking about, and some people are mad because they're not on them. Us guys, we don't fool around, Us guys over here in Lahaina, we young group, and we're not fooling around. Yeah? You guys talk about one group. If anything happen here in Lahaina and that we don't like them, we going to stop them. Yeah? We're going to jump in front of the tractor. We're going to do that. We're the kind group that's going to take action. Yeah? We fought hard for protect our canoe beach and our wahikuli from commercial activities. Yeah? And that's why we're not going to fool around, guys. I mean, yeah, hey, crybaby, all you guys like about not being in a group, get involved. Yeah? Get your collars off your, off the chair and get involved. Yeah? I walk the beaches. Yeah? Now we get another Kauai group hotels that I do some more beach refurbishment. Yeah, here we go again. Guys, they're like build, all close to the beach, but then they get all screwed up. And all this thing about all these setbacks and whatnot. Oh my God, we've been talking about this for years and years, 10 plus years. Tell him to do the managed retreat. Nobody listen. Nobody do them. Look at Kanapali. All the sidewalks gone. Hyatt, just over there, put one blanket over the sand and rocks. I don't know what the hell these engineers think they're doing. What kind of college they with? Leave the beach alone. All these guys drowning is all business people. Hotels, construction, the Lahaina guy, whatever, snake, something like that. Oh my God. I do more in Lahaina than anybody, bro. And all I just gonna say, if you guys gonna defer this bugger, okay, good. If you're gonna do it for a good reason. But not make them forever. Make them only to maybe, I don't know, the 7th, the 24th or whatever. Don't make them too dang long. And if you're gonna extend them, make sure you stop all permits will be handed out until you guys figure it out. Yeah, until you guys figure it out. Because here in Lahaina, anytime somebody doing something, I'm not joking, I get on call. Oh, Junior, something happening over here, Kanapali. Oh, Junior, Kahana. You're the guy doing construction over here. I get all the calls, guys. So I don't want to be in a group. Because I in a group whether I like it or not. Okay? But you guys gotta tell you more. Get this bugger figured out. Make sure, like all the, bro, you go look at Kahana, guys. Kahana, hold quiet. All these hotels will fall inside the ocean. They're getting serious about coastal management. That's where this whole damn thing comes. They're not about the money, guys.
3 minutes.
Yeah, all these hotels and businesses and whatnot. And
Thank you, Junior.
oh, yeah, shit. The main people is us, the residents.
Thank
Okay?
you, Junior. You're always such a delight when you testify. Commissioners, have you any clarifying questions for Junior? Seeing none, as always, thank you so much for your input.
That's
Appreciate.
all. Yeah, I gotta change my name. Sorry.
Next up, we have Claire Apana. Miss Apana, please come forward and unmute yourself. You have 3 minutes.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for all your time spent. I don't know the answer to the question, but I will just give you my testimony. What Malama Kakanilua has done to further the need for change in the SMA rules and the way that the SMA area is managed is to do a contested case to bring you more information. And we've been doing this on January 21st, it'll be 3 years. Could we use better rules? Yes. And how we will get there. I am for a broader scope. I have gone to the preliminary meetings and voiced my opinion with the contested case. But I don't know that I've been heard. I still see that what's happening at the shorelines, especially with hotels, is really horrible. I mean, they are taking their and using right up to the high water mark. And I believe you need to keep that high water mark. And I don't know if you could achieve what you need to by doing some town halls where the consultation is actually recorded and listened to. But you know, we also
Claire, excuse me just a moment. Whomever has their audio on, will
that's me. I just turned it off. Sorry.
Okay, please mute it. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. So we also are sponsor a project at a beach restoration that Cody Nemet Tui Vaiti is doing, and I am just amazed by his diligence with using the traditional plants and systems and listening to the land in trying to restore this beach. But we all realize that we are doing something that is just barely touching it. There is no restoration as far as I have seen in the SMA process. There's never a project stopped to say, when are you going to restore the beach? I agree with Commissioner Dicos. Has it been addressed? I really don't know. But I would like to say that I have made comments, and I think we've gone extra miles to try to see that this SMA process is done better. But at the same time, I don't know that we've really been heard.
3 minutes.
And our comments documented.
Thank you, Claire. Your 3 minutes is up. Claire, excuse me, Claire. Your 3 minutes is up.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Commissioners, questions for Ms. Apana? I have a question for you, please. You mentioned that you were in involved in restoration, and you said we. You mentioned Cody's name, but who is the we, please, and with whom are you associated? Thank you.
With Malama Kakanilua. Malama Kakanilua is the sponsor organization for the project that is run by Cody Nemeth.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. Commissioners,
Thank
any
you.
other questions? Commissioner Dikos.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Apana, for your testimony today. When I hear beach restoration, a lot of times I think of the dredging and bulldozing of sand. Can you describe the restoration you called it traditional restoration?
It is simply amazing. It has been a project where Coco Nemeth has actually used the traditional methods that would have been used of kilo and really observing what is going on in the land before moving. So the project involves planting of plants that have come up in the seed bank right on that land, and taking out the invasives that affect that, and then trying to change the way that the mulivai is protected by not having, he's just done this in himself with neighbors, not having them dig trenches right to the ocean to make sure that their properties are not flooded. And really allowing the flooding to occur on the land where it was meant to be and to hold that water before allowing it all to run into the ocean, and to keep that mulivai from having to take all of that all of the runoff. That's one of them. His planting of what was meant to be there, I think, is the most significant thing that is being done. Besides his asking for stopping of foot traffic that are destroying the dunes, and doing some mitigation to foot traffic on the beach. And I don't ever see hotels doing that. I don't know. I may be wrong.
Thank you,
I
Ms.
don't see it.
Apana.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Commissioners, any other questions? Ms. Apana, thank you for your time and testimony. Always appreciated.
Thank you very much.
Our next testifier is Francine Arona. Auntie Mopsy, please step forward and unmute yourself. Auntie Mopsy, are you there?
Yes, I am. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. You have 3 minutes. Please go ahead.
Okay. Aloha, Chair DeCosta and Vice Chair Pali. I'm sorry you're feeling under the weather, and commissioners. For the record, my name is Francine Arona, known as Auntie Mopsy Protect Paia. I'm here to testify on my own behalf, a resident who lives on the shoreline, and I promise to tell the truth. I am not part of the working group. It's unfortunate that something as important as the SMA rules comes to this board for discussion and decisions without major input from the residents and the community who live on the shoreline and what is considered the SMA district. I'm surprised to hear that there was a mail out and a meeting in Paia of 48 people. I'm sorry if I missed that. I don't hear more local testifiers. My last testimony asked this board to defer this item so that a group of working people can meet with the community to bring awareness of what SMA rules are and the changes that are recommended by the planning department. There are many technical terms that are used in the rules that we, the community, don't understand. Again, it's unfortunate that this all happening during the busiest time of the year in which we devote to our ohana. I put myself on pause to celebrate Thanksgiving and Christmas, what our Ohana calls Thanks Christ. Elections, of course, and transitions of workforce come into play as well. Our community deserve better. Kupuna who live in my lane don't know about SMA rules. The house needs painting, they paint. The steps need repair, they repair it, without any knowledge of getting a permit. Our merchants suffer vandalism, they repair the broken window and they paint, but they get a violation for doing the repairs without a permit. I know that adjustments to the new rules will make it easier for homeowners to paint and repair. I do have difficulty in changing our shoreline rules to benefit our hotels and luxury homes. If we continue to allow that, we destroy the cultural presence of our shoreline. My biggest concern is to make sure that our community has a chance to be a voice and not the same people testifying like myself. I personally want to apologize to this board if you have given up quality time to be with your ohana, to listen to us and to deal with the struggles of communication failures for this agenda item during testimony. The SMA rules are very important, and I humbly ask you to defer this agenda item so the working group can have meetings with the SMA community and planning. It's a shame that the advisory board does not have this on their agenda list. I believe that the intent of having this board was to reach out to the community in bringing awareness of county rules and regulations. Mahalo for allowing me to testify this morning.
Thank you so much, Anti-Mobster Ms. Zerona, also known as. Commissioners, have you any questions for Ms. Zerona? So I do have a statement, not as much as a question. Thank you so much for your concern of all of the hours that we put in on this. We do this because we are involved in our community and want to be sure that the best things happen. So thank you so much and Happy New Year.
Mahalo and Happy New Year to all of you.
Our next up is Tom Crowley. Mr. Crowley, you have 3 minutes.
Aloha, Commission. Tom Crowley, you know me well from attending many of your meetings virtually or in person. And I don't have anything substantive to add to the rules that you're considering, but I do have a comment on process. I've been involved in creating new laws from the get-go, the bed and breakfast law being one of them. And I've been involved, as all of you have been, in making changes to those laws, just small amendments. And those things first start with the planning department, or sometimes they start with the county council, or they might start with the county council. And then they go through a process where they go through the county council, they get referred to the planning commission. The planning commission makes comments on them. They go back to council. They go into a committee. The committee may have several meetings on it. Then it finally goes to full council. Then it has 2 full hearings before it makes its way to a change of law. Yet we have something here that is more substantial than an amendment to a law or even creating one new part of ordinance. And it's all in your kuleana. It's just all here. And I think that's the problem, is that this needs a vetting process similar to what we go through for changing ordinance, if you will. If you think about community plans, the community plans go through dozens of meetings at the community level. Then they come to you guys and they go through oftentimes multiple hearings. And then they go to the county council and again go through all these hearings again. But all that is condensed here because you are the authority that's going to approve these rules. And the rule changes are voluminous. There's quite a bit here. So I'd like to make a suggestion going forward. You hear a lot of people saying, don't make your decision today and defer. But I would like to see you making decisions in smaller chunks, taking a portion of this at a time and putting it on the agenda and saying, we're going to make a decision on this section today and get all the input you can, both written and verbal, and then make those decisions as you go along, rather than taking this as one complete document and making a decision on it as one complete document at one time. I do think it'll probably take you a few more meetings before you would be able to do this. And notice for exactly the portions that you're going to be making decisions on, maybe should be given more than just the 6 days notice that you get in the agendas here. Maybe if you put out a schedule to say that on this meeting 2 weeks from now we're going to work on this, and on this meeting 2 weeks from now, 2 weeks from then we're going to work on the next portion. And that might break this thing down into chunks that where you can get all the input that you need and that the public feels like they need to get out there, and then get this thing done. Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Crowley. Commissioner Polly?
Hello, Mr. Crowley. Thank you for your testimony and being a part of this, even though you're just watching alongside and not necessarily involved in the actual data part. I think that would be a good idea for some pieces and some different code and law. In this particular case, because SMA and shoreline setback, they have to go hand in hand. They're kind of like melded. So you can't really commit to certain things here until you're committing to certain things there, because we actually attempted that, I don't know, a couple months ago, like trying to get through one and then going to the other one, but there's a lot of overlapping and they play off each other. And so in this particular case, it's not necessarily working out. But definitely I appreciate you always bringing your ideas and even just being a part of it and being a community watcher and an involvement. That's really, I'm grateful for that. So thank you.
And I'm grateful for all that you guys are doing. I understand just how difficult this is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crowley. Commissioners, any other comments or questions for Mr. Crowley? Seeing none, mahalo nui as always for your testimony and time.
Aloha.
Aloha. Anyone else wanting to testify? This is your last call. Please step forward. And then after you...
Hi, Nishiki.
Kai, you will be after the lady in the gallery. Hang on just a second, please. Please introduce yourself. You have 3 minutes.
Aloha. Thank you. My name is Lisa Paulson.
Be close.
Oh, sorry. My name is Lisa Paulson with Maui Hotel and Lodging Association. I am a paid lobbyist. Thank you very much for this opportunity to testify. We respectfully request that the proposed shoreline SMA rules be revised to remove the 40-foot setback and adopt the revised repair provisions. And if that is not possible, we do request adoption of the draft rules to be postponed for further community input and development, and having the working group continue their valuable work. The planning department's proposed shoreline SMA rules are burdensome at best, and they impose too many restrictions on the ability to repair and renovate our existing commercial structures. Because the draft rules significantly expand the regulated area by using the EHL line as the shoreline and then adding 40 more feet for the setback. This does put a burden on the land too far inland to be reasonable and rational. So again, thank you for the opportunity to testify and taking me last minute here in the room. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Ms. Paulson. Just a moment, please. Commissioners, have you questions for the testifier? My question is, are you part of either of the working groups?
I am not, but I'm in constant communication with them. Okay. So
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time and testimony. Next up, Ms. Kai Nishiki. Kai, please unmute yourself. You will have 3 minutes.
Good morning, Maui Planning Commission. Welcome to our newest member, and also to our new planning director. Look forward to seeing you folks a couple times a month for the next couple years. I think it's important to go back to the point that Commissioner Decos brought up, and what is the purpose of these rules. And it is to regulate the use and activities in the shoreline environment in order to protect the safety and welfare of the public by providing protection from coastal hazards. And sometimes that means protection from what humans want to do. And also to ensure that the public use and enjoyment of our coastal resources are preserved and protected for future generations. And to that point, I was able to go to Oahu yesterday for the opening of the Hawaii Climate Action Week. And it was really inspiring to have the youth climate action, that is the next generation, our youth. And to see the passion that they have for protecting future generations' use of our shoreline areas. And so, I'll mention I am part of the working group and have attended mostly all of the meetings with the Maui Planning Commission, and then also with the working group. And I do think that there's all this business industry, people who make money off of our shoreline all want to be a part of this, and they want to protect their ability to make money off of our shorelines. But who can't show up to these meetings is our beach, is the public trust resources, is the reef, is the voiceless who can't show up. And so it is really important to keep in mind what we're doing with these rules, and that it has been a long time, and it is important to get protections in place so that our future generations do have the opportunity to have continued access and use of our shorelines. So I would ask for a very short deferral, just so we can have maybe 2-3 meetings at the most to finish up on the working group, and a little bit of time to bring it to our constituencies. But in the end, we're here to protect our coastal resources and the public trust. So I definitely want to keep that in mind and in heart as we move forward. Mahalo.
Thank you, Ms. Nishiki. Commissioners, have you any clarifying questions for Ms. Nishiki? Seeing none, I thank you as always for your time and testimony. Next up, we have Christina Lizzi. Ms. Lizzi, please come forward. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Director or Chair, and thank you, Vice Chair Polly, Commissioners, and Director Aiwohi. I'm Christina Lizzi on behalf of Hawaii Veve Ula Ula, and I'm a member of the working group. I promise to tell the truth. I have attended all 4 meetings of the working group since the last commission hearing. I've also attended previous commission hearings on the drafts of the SMA rules and been following along with the process. I do want to echo the request for a brief deferral to allow the working group to come up with some, I do believe we'll come to consensus on some aspects of these rules. However, I believe another benefit of this, a short deferral until perhaps February, would allow us to really clarify and bring forth language that would address the areas where we're not in consensus. I think one of the major concerns is the no needs section and needing to tighten that up to make sure it's actually legal. We might not actually come to a full consensus on that. Perhaps we will, but that would be an area where competing language could be clarified and presented, and perhaps closer to a resolution could be put forth. I echo Commissioner Decos's reminder of the purpose of these rules. I also want to point out that Chapter 343 echoes the same sentiment that the legislature has put forward, that the environment is essential to humanity's well-being, and that's really the purpose of these rules, is to protect the shoreline area for not only the current environment but the future environment that will be the environment that our future generations rely upon. I also echo the concern that too long of a deferral will just lead to a further weakening of these rules. I think the Planning Department put forth a set of rules, both for the shoreline and the SMA, that does weaken some of the provisions that were already in place. And while it strengthens just a few places, and we're concerned that allowing this to go forward will just allow that to be further eroded if it's left too long out. I think we have a good window of opportunity here to sort of clarify and bring forward to the Commission those areas where the Commission could strengthen the rules and have that alongside the community that would like to see them be able to facilitate development more easily in that area. I'll just keep it brief at that, and I appreciate all of your time and efforts into these rules and look forward to working with you on them further.
Thank you, Ms. Lizzi. Commissioners, have you any Commissioners, have you any questions for Ms. Lizzi? Commissioner Dicos, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Lizzi, for your testimony and all your work in the working groups. This may be a bit of a loaded question, but given the history of the existing rules and the complete failure to protect coastal resources and the amount of people we have in harm's way at the moment, I struggle to look at these new rules and find anything in there that really reverses the trend. Can you enlighten me maybe since it sounds like there's, do you have any enlightening words?
I think one of the areas that it looks like things were being strengthened was with adding in the Slerexa and the best available science and using that as part of the model. I'm concerned that that was put forth while allowing larger sections, the loopholes in the SMA rules with the larger no need section, that the Commission or the department had already put forward sort of a balance of, well, if we get this little bit of extra protection, we'll weaken other areas. And I'm afraid that's sort of a gap that's going to get greater as we move forward. As you've already heard, one of the proposals is to take away that extra 40-foot buffer in the shoreline area. And so I think that's something we're going to be struggling with, is this idea that as we move forward, it's a this for that. In order to get any stronger protections in one area, that others will have to be weakened in what already is coming forth. And as you pointed out, it does seem like these rules already are weakening a lot of our shoreline protections.
Just one last question. So there's a lot of push for deferral. My concern is, I think as others have expressed concerns, is that the more time that goes by, the possibility of this just getting shelved and going back to the old existing rules gets higher and higher, especially if we lose commissioners. And you said a little more time would be valuable. Are you confident that would? How confident are you that would make a difference?
I'm confident that if it's just until perhaps February, that you'd at least have some stronger or a better idea of where that divide is and some complete language to add in or consider as opposed to what's before you right now. So I am confident. I think there is, that concern about where things might get eroded, but at the same time, I think we're at a point now in the working group where we are clarifying where we can come to consensus on and where we're going to diverge, and we'll know then which sections we really need to come up with alternative language for the Commission to consider. And it sounds like there's other folks that will be putting forth additional language for you to consider as well.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. Commissioners, any other questions? Seeing none, I thank you so much for your time and testimony, Ms. Lizzi.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to testify? If so, please unmute yourself and step forward at this time. Going once. Thank you. Mr. Hanada, I was just informed that you would like to testify. Please unmute yourself. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I was born and raised on this island 71 years ago. I've used the ocean resources for almost 60 years. And my concern has been dam replenishment projects on the north shore of Maui, because I've seen the damage it does to the marine resources. And whoever says that it's a good thing, they only telling you the good thing. They're not sharing with you the bad stuff. I have photos over close to 20 years of the changes on the shoreline. And what they want to do is they want to protect their own interests. They're not concerned about adjacent properties or the marine environment. The reason why I got involved was because I could see what that dam replenishment projects were doing to the marine environment. And it's not good. Anytime you make changes or you want to armor the shoreline, it has a negative impact. Adjacent properties and the marine environment. And from a cultural standpoint, if you understand the whole, everything from the top of the mountain impacts everything below it. So the minute you do something to the land, it impacts the ocean. So I'm here to protect the ocean for not just for myself, for my grandchildren and their grandchildren. Thank you.
Mahalo, Mr. Hanada. Commissioners, have you any questions for Mr. Hanada? Commissioner Polly and then Commissioner Dikos.
Yes, thank you for your testimony. Can you clarify if you are asking us to approve what we have, or is your testimony that you want to allow the extension? Can you just clarify your position in our action today?
If you're gonna weaken the rules so that you can do more stuff on the shoreline, you're actually gonna negatively impact the ocean. Whatever you do on the shoreline will negatively impact the ocean. So if you're gonna do that, then don't do it.
Okay. Okay. So here we're either going to approve, deny, or defer what's in front of us. And would you mind just clarifying where you're at with that?
If you don't have all the facts, if you don't have all the information from everybody, I would defer and get more information from others. Because you may have information from scientists, from business people, from landowners, but you don't have information from the ones that use the resource, the ocean resource. I would ask them, because they know just as much as a person that has a lot of degrees or letters after their name.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for clarifying.
Thank you.
Commissioner Dikos.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Hanada, for your testimony today. We don't get a lot of testifiers with what you're saying. I know the rules are trying to get away from, hard armoring of our coastlines, but there seems to be a wide open space for soft engineering. So beach nourishment, beach replenishment, whatever you want to call it, seems to be our way out to this whole sea level rise issue, because management, nobody wants to talk about managed retreat. So I'm just curious, I believe I've seen you talk about other things, but if you have experience from the water side, can you just explain what your marine background is and where you've seen the results of some of these soft armoring effects on the marine resource?
Okay. I have a degree in biology from the University of Hawaii, Manoa. I'm also a fisherman, a lifelong fisherman, and one of my passions is spearfishing. I spearfish the north shore of Maui and basically all of Maui, Molokai, some of Molokai. I've been fishing from a boat commercially for decades, over 50 years. And I consider the North Shore of Maui my home, although I live in Kula. And because when I used to dive back in the day, it'd be winter, the high surf, the water would be clean, and I could go diving. But now, recently, no, not recently, maybe close to 20 years ago, it started to get really milky. And I was wondering, why is it so milky? And when I did my own research, I went up the coastline. I was in Kanaha. And I went up the coastline and I saw a sand replenishment project using really fine-grained, dirty, filthy sand. And they were piling that thing up on the shoreline. And I looked at the water, and the water was really turbid. And that turbidity cloud drifted down towards Kanaha. And I was saying, you know what? This is what's causing all that damage. I mean, it's creating all that murkiness. It was really bad. I have photographs of it over time. And, you know, because of that, I was one of the guys, the bad guys, that say, wait, you cannot do this stuff. You cannot take that inland sand and put it on the beach, because that sand grain is not the same. It's not clean. And you're destroying the marine environment. You're filling in all the pukas in the reef. You're suffocating the sunlight from getting to the limu, to the to everything. You're destroying the marine environment, the reef. But they didn't care. They just kept doing it. The state allowed it. And I kept fighting back, and I said, you cannot do this. And they were using that culturally sensitive sand from Waikapu. And they claimed that it was clean, and it wasn't. I have a sample of that sand in my in my garage, waiting for people to ask me what was it like. And I'll show you if you want. I can come down and show you.
Thank you. So if the grain size is appropriate, you'd be okay with soft engineering, beach nourishment?
No.
If it was a patching, no.
No. You let Mother Nature do its thing. You let Mother Nature take a course. The minute you start putting stuff on the beach, because Sugar Cove has put hundreds of thousands of cubic yards on the beach, and they have to keep doing it year after year after year. And they use that inland sand from Waikapu until the county made them stop. They cannot take that sand anymore and put it on their beach. So what did they do? They're bringing in sand from Oahu, inland sand from Waianae, and they're shipping the thing in containers and putting it on their beach. And I think does the same thing. It's just, and why? Why do they have to do it year after year? And where is that sand going? And what is it doing to the marine environment? You see, all people see is the sand on the beach and a blue ocean. They don't see under the surface. They don't keep track of what's happening, or they're not monitoring what's happening under the ocean. But the ones that use the resource know. Fishermen like us, divers, we know what's happening because we can see.
Thank you, Mr. Hanada. Appreciate very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Our next testifier is Mr. Jim Buika, sorry. Mr. Buika, please unmute yourself. You have 3 minutes.
Aloha, Chair. My name's Jim Buika. I can't get the picture of me going, but that's okay.
First of all, before you start, are you testifying on your own behalf or as an employee?
Yes, I'm testifying on my own behalf. I am a shoreline planner with the planning department, but many of these people here inspired me to say a few words here anyway, so I'll make sure I take vacation time, but I have been listening. Thank you, everyone, for all your work and being here today and all your testimony. I am a resident of Wailuku. I am not part of the working group, even though I am one of the shoreline planners. I've been doing shoreline permits for 16 years on the shoreline. I've seen our planning process, and I strongly encourage you to adopt the new erosion hazard line. That's kind of what I'm defending here versus the Hawai'i supposedly magical formula. It's opaque and doesn't get us anywhere. It's no different than the one we have now. I've been working on these rules for years, and I didn't join the working group just because I'm kind of exhausted from it all. But anyway, my point I want to make is that we, and when I mean we, really all of Hawaii desperately needs to move from reactive parcel by parcel shoreline permitting to a proactive regionally based shoreline planning process per beach cell based on what we know the future is and with the knowledge of the damage that our parcel by parcel planning is causing along our shoreline now. Regional planning does engage, as Lucien was saying, in Claire, traditional and cultural considerations. It involves all of our neighbors, businesses, all of the stakeholders in a proactive manner. And the most important thing about the erosion hazard line is it is a land line in the sand rather than our head in the sand, the way with this formula that we've had. It provides that line on a map provides tremendous education, outreach, awareness, and activity along our shoreline. It creates a transparency that is not there right now versus the way we do it now. It's opaque, and that's not good for everyone involved. And finally, our shoreline team's capacity is extremely limited, and we cannot live in a reactive planning paradigm any longer. We really need to move forward. Sea level rise and episodic storms are real and more frequent. December 18th and 19th, what happened on those days? July 16th and 17th this summer, super swell. December 4th and 5th the year before. We're living in a new norm, and we need to recognize it and plan for that future. And, you know, regional planning does involve input from everyone. Mahalo.
Thank you, Mr. Buika. Commissioners, have you any questions for our testifier? Commissioner Polly, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Buika. I appreciate you chiming in. So that was going to be a question I had for Candace when we closed public testimony. Was just going to, and I'll ask you since you put it in your testimony. So are you not necessarily for the deferral then? Are you saying, hey, we have, as a department in the last 10 years, we put our best foot forward. Here are the rules, adopt them now. Can you just clarify what you're recommending based off of our action required today?
I support the deferral just to get everyone's input. You know, Pam and Lisa had some good input, Auntie Mopsy, Claire, Junior, Lucien, many others in the community. I support that, the deferral, but not at the risk of losing the erosion hazard line as a key component of the shoreline rules moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you for clarification.
Commissioner Thayer, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for testifying. So you mentioned the Kauai formula being opaque. Could you kind of explain that a little further? And also, I'm wondering of your thoughts on the use of that as a design standard as well.
Sure, thank you for the question. Well, Well, the Kauai formula is just a different imagination of what we have right now on Maui, where you need a state certified shoreline and then you create an erosion hazard line. For instance, Halama Street. The only way that we know the existing formula along Halama Street right now is you go to an aerial photograph and you line up the pools, one parcel after another. Over 20 years of these small plantation homes being bought by rich people and being converted to 7,499 square foot homes and a pool out front is by parcel shoreline planning, rather than dealing with Halama Street in a transparent way with an erosion hazard line, which goes way back through a lot of those plantation homes, unfortunately, sitting on a pile of sand. So design guidelines certainly is good. I do believe that the part of that design is to recognize the future erosion hazard, and to move back properly. And then additional design, as I've been out on Halama Street with some of the plantation home owners, you have a deep lot. You own 2 properties in a row here. You can retire your home that's the old home. You can move back, and part of the design is you can move up. You can elevate besides moving back with the erosion hazard line. So that is one example of a design guideline that could be built in, and I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions for Mr. Buika? Seeing none, I thank you so much for taking your vacation time to chat with us.
Thank you.
Are there any other testifiers online, Carolyn? Okay, no one has testified to or signed up to testify online. So I will be closing public testimony for this meeting. If you are online, this is your last chance to step forward and testify. Seeing no one, testimony is closed. At this juncture, I'd like to take a 5-minute break, and then we will come back and continue.
Recording has stopped. Recording has started.
Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen. I will now reconvene the Maui Planning Commission meeting of January the 10th. Okay, at this juncture, we've had public testimony, and I would like to have the commissioners, please. Yes, Commissioner Polly. I can't hear you.
I was just tabling up for like a question, but you definitely finished your intro.
At this juncture, I would like to have comments from the commissioners, and then we will go to the county for their recommendation. I'm doing it a little bit backwards just because of what's happened over the last couple of hours, and we'll go from there. Vice Chair Polly, go ahead, please.
I was just getting ready, girl, getting ready. Okay,
You
I have
go,
a question.
girl. You're up.
I have a question for Planner Thackerson, please. Staff Planner.
Environmental Planning Supervisor. Just kidding. Commissioner Polly.
Excuse us.
Wait, say it again. Environmental.
It was Environmental Planning Supervisor, but I'm also staff planner.
Okay, environmental sup. All right. So I listened to your presentation. I heard the testimony, and I really just simply have one question for you. It was my opinion that in previous meetings, based off of your testimony, and maybe body language, that maybe you weren't for a deferral. But I did hear you say in your presentation that you are asking us for a deferral, just not a long one. Is that my proper assessment? And if not, can you clarify?
Thank you, Commissioner Polly. The department is asking for a deferral. We are in favor of a deferral. We feel that we're very close. We would not like a long deferral. We're concerned about a few things, losing some commissioners or change of new commissioners potentially in March, and then them not being 100% caught up to everything. So that's why we're not in favor of a long deferral. We think we're very close, and yeah, that's it.
Okay, great. So that's the only question I have. I do have a request. If a deferral is granted today, what would help me as a commissioner is if this is deferred and we decide when we come back, would you mind doing me a big favor? I know that we've gotten stuff and you might think we save all of the stuff, and I'm guilty of not saving everything all the time. So if it's deferred and it's back on the agenda, do you mind providing before this current working group of 4 meetings, from the last time we did a bunch of revisions out loud, we went item by item in that special meeting, would you mind providing a copy of where we ended and all the work we did, and then providing what the new changes are so we can see the difference? That's what I would request if this is deferred and we put it back on the agenda.
Yes, if that is the commission's pleasure, then we can definitely provide those documents. I believe I have a copy. I definitely have a copy of the red line ones that we gave to you at that meeting, but I believe I have somewhere in my emails what you guys. Oh, okay, yeah. So Cal, thank you, Cal. So he was just saying that we've been redlining and tracking, so we should be able to go back to see it, and so it should all be on there. And we can provide both. And then we'll probably provide a memo from the department explaining and highlighting the changes so you don't have to search through it, paid like line item by line item. So we'll say the changes were these are where we compromised, and then if we don't have areas that we compromise on, then we'll say, these are the areas we didn't. Some people suggest that there's an A and a B. We'll try to make it a little bit easier because, man, those dog-eared and struck out and all the red light, yeah, it gets it's hard to read. It's getting messy.
Awesome. That's all I request. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Commissioners, who's next, please? Commissioner Thompson. Oh, I'll get you next, Commissioner Freitas. Commissioner Thompson, go ahead, please.
Sure. Just one question for you, Candace. What's the appropriate time for her delay?
The working group suggested that we bring this back to you on February 7th. That was the date that we had thought, and that would be a special meeting because after checking with our what is his title, the Commission Supervisor Clayton Yoshida, he did say that February's agendas were pretty full, so we didn't want to put this on an already full agenda, so we thought it would have to be a special meeting. January 24th, we feel is too soon because it only gives the group until the end of next week to finish up, and then if Carolyn would post them onto the agenda, that doesn't give you much time to actually read it, or the public, right? We don't like where we're giving this to you the day before, 2 days before. If we had it on the 7th, we would still try to push the working group to get it done fairly quickly so that we could post it and give you enough time to review. And then I also have a calendar here of when this room is available as well. We forget that we share it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Freitas?
Thank you, Chair. For Ms. Stackerson, please stay there. I have a couple of questions. So from the working group meetings, those are the ones that you're going to try to put in as changes in red line items. And for all of the other self-organized, like Ms. Tumpap's group and what they submit, now those really, they may have some great suggestions. Are those going to be put in? Or are those going to come back to us in a meeting, in our next meeting, and we have to decide on it? Or are you folks going to meet with them prior to the next meeting? And I hope the next meeting is the last. Otherwise, don't come back to us. We came here today after saying, oh yeah, and I said in the last meeting, we are going to have holiday, a switchover in director. Do you folks have time? And then you come here and you present this and say, right at the very beginning, your presentation said we should defer this. It shouldn't have been on the agenda then. But were we required to because that was sort of tabled, or why did we even have today? There's almost everyone saying just get all these groups involved and push it back 2 or 3 months already, even if I'm not here. I mean, I think I'm here listening and trying to guide it in a way so that whoever takes my place, hey, they're gonna know that we gave everybody a chance and get this thing done right.
Thank you, Commissioner Freitas. Yes, we were required to hold today's meeting because we did notice it on the agenda. So the public may have taken time off or something and wanted to come testify. As we saw, we did have a lot of testifiers. So even though we knew we were going to ask for a deferral, we still had to hold the meeting. As far as the independent working group, that is not something that the department is involved in. I haven't even seen any of the stuff submitted by them. I believe it came in just yesterday, right before noon, if it was even given to the commissioners. I have not seen any of that information from the working group outside of the one that the department is doing. So it would definitely, I would have to take a look at the information that's in there. Maybe some of the concerns that they brought up may have already been addressed in some of the working group. They may have some interesting ideas. We would need to see if that's something that we can do. We process the permits, right? So we know a lot more of the meats and potatoes of what goes into that. While we appreciate the thoughts of another independent working group, it would really be having to look at, see if that's something that's even viable for the department to do. And we'd probably have to also check with our corp counsel as well.
Okay. So let me just say this then. In the next meeting, we're going to have what you folks sort of agreed on in the working group, but we may entertain again some of those independent groups' concerns, and we may have to take those one at a time in our next meeting. I just want to know how this next one's going to be. I just feel like we're not moving.
Thank you.
But I'm feeling like not that we're not moving, but I think we are setting up these meetings when there's a lot more work that needs to be done. I think that's the best way I can say it.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Freitas. As we've all known, because we've sat through lots and lots of testimony, I think it's kind of never ending with continual testimony, and maybe people in the community hearing about this at the last hour and still wanting to contribute. It's almost chasing your own tail, right? This could go on and on for a long time. At some point, the department has to say, we're comfortable submitting these rules to you, the commission, for your review. And it's up to you guys if you want to consider every single member of the public's opinion into creating this document or not. We do the same thing with all of our permits that come before you, and we see lots of testifiers, right? Because they haven't been able to have a hand in it. So it's up to you about how far you want to go, but it's the department's responsibility to just present you with a document that we feel comfortable with.
Okay, thank you.
So commissioners, please by a show of hands or voice, let me know who is available on the 7th, if we were to vote to defer it that long. Commissioner Dikos?
Just to clarify, I'm a little confused now too. So the planning department had a version of the SMA rules before the holidays that they were happy with, ready to push through. You're saying it's now been amended because of discussions with the working group or outside? No, because of what's been done with the working group.
Yes, we have been amending them with the working group because there are 3 members. Well, Tara Owens, because she's Sea Grant, but she's part of our department in my mind. And so we do have members of the staff there that are actively in these meetings as well.
Okay, so the version we'll get will be the changes that we saw prior to the holidays, and maybe a different color or something for the working group suggested changes.
Yes.
If there's no agreement, there might be an A and B version, and that's what we'll be deciding possibly on the 7th.
Yes, the 7th, and the 7th would be a special meeting should the commission want to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Polly.
Sorry, I just want to clarify that. We made several changes from the original version prior to the holidays. So planning had their version. They were gung-ho ready. They were like, yay, 10, 12 years behind us. Let's do it. We got it. And we just we went through it. And then we came back and we were ready to vote. And then we went through it again, page by page. So just to be clear on the process. And then we went into the holidays and deferred it, working groups coming in. So there's been multiple versions. That's why I asked specifically for the latest one that we had the day on the special meeting. We spent I thought it was in, out, 1 hour, voted, we're good. We ended up going 6+ hours and then dropped because multiple people had to leave. That's the version I want to see because we went through every single line item and did a lot of work ourselves based off of the information and testimony we had. So that's the one that I believe is the latest version of this. And then the working group took that, I believe, and then continued to try to create happy mediums. So in my opinion, and let's see, environmental sup, let me correct me if I'm wrong. When we come back in a couple weeks, whenever it is, and revisit this again, we can take your recommendations from the group. We can look at other groups. We can hear other testimony. We can incorporate other testimony we've heard, and then we can agree to adopt as is or continue to make changes until we find something we want to adopt. I believe that is our power and authority here in the commission. And so we still have that flexibility.
Yes, Commissioner Polly, that is correct. You can put whatever you want into the sausage.
Okay, commissioners, and I will say this as chair, I'm going to exercise my power here. When we have the next meeting, that is the last meeting we're going to have on this. We're not going to kick this can around the block any longer. It has been going on for 10 years. There have been community meetings. There have been meetings until I'm lost 10 pounds over this, which is a good thing. But it's just enough already. So if it is extended, and that's up to the commissioners because they're going to have to come back for a special meeting. If it's pushed out to February 7th, that is the drop dead date, period, end of story. So I have that prerogative and I'm exercising that prerogative because nobody wants to hear this for another 10 years, irrespective of the fact that I will be gone. No cheering. It's just enough already. So having said that, Commissioner Polly?
Chair, just in the desire to be flexible, I don't know that I can commit to the 7th. And so I know that you just called it out on the 7th, but I didn't raise my hand. I don't know if you noticed. And so I'm going to be coming back off island that day. So I don't know that I'd meet unless you did an afternoon. If you did a later meeting on the 7th, I might be able to come in hot from the plane, but otherwise I'm wide open on the 21st. So just wanted to let you know that.
Thank you. I didn't actually put that in cement. I just said if we were to extend it, that's the last day. So, yeah. So I need to find out, please, from the commissioners. Toss some dates out there, please. Candace has the schedule of when the room is available. And, of course, we have Blue Jeans. So, Commissioner Thayer?
I'm available on the 7th and looks like the 21st.
Okay. Commissioner Thompson?
I'm sorry. Excuse me.
sorry.
The 24th, are you talking about January 24th? Because that would be your next meeting. But then again, if we do that meeting, then the con to that is that the document would only be posted a day in advance. So that's why I have February's schedule here in front of me.
Yeah, I said February 21st.
February 21st, we have 8:30. It looks like the prosecuting attorney's office has this room. So it's not available.
So I can do the 7th afternoon.
I can do the 7th.
Okay. Commissioner Thompson? Commissioner Dicos?
Yep.
Commissioner Apple? Commissioner Hippolito?
Yes.
Commissioner Freitas?
I will make myself available, but I really not sure if they're going to be ready. And maybe the thing should be when will they be ready? If it has to be in March or whenever.
They're going to be ready on February 7th if that's what we decide, because enough already. So,
Okay.
are you available?
21st.
On the 7th in the afternoon.
February 7th.
February 7th.
It's a Tuesday.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. What afternoon? I would probably defer to Commissioner Polly because she was the one who requested the afternoon.
At what time do you land, please? We will accommodate your schedule because you're an integral part of this decision.
Absolutely. Anytime after 11 a.m.
Okay. So what, 11:30? So then 11:30, is that pushing it too much for you? You okay, good? Okay, 11:30, February the 7th. In the meantime, I will need a motion to defer it and a
Sure.
second, and then we'll vote.
Chair, can I?
Yes, sir.
Are we going to have our planners available?
Yeah, they will be
okay.
available. Yeah.
Okay.
We work here, Commissioner
Okay.
Dico. So
Good job.
I'll be working on Tuesday the 7th. So I'll be here.
Ms. Polly, go ahead.
Yeah, Chair, as you were calling for a motion, I'll go ahead and make a motion to defer this topic to Tuesday, February 7th at 11:30 a.m.
Thank you. We have a second. Commissioner Thompson, second. All kinds of seconds. Yay. I'm going to do a roll call vote on this, please.
Are we discussion? Can I?
Sure.
So I wondering if I can make a request, or I don't know if it would have to be like a friendly amendment to the motion, but something to consider in the rules. So I brought this up in a previous meeting, and the director at the time suggested saving that for a future revision of the rules, but I don't know if or when we're going to want to do that, considering how long this took us. But this was brought up in one of the pieces of written testimony that we received, and that is to consider a signage requirement for permits that are proposed. And there was language, like I think it's Hawaii County language that was brought up for this exact thing as part of permit.
Thank you, Commissioner. Can I speak? Oh, okay. Yes. I think at the time we had discussed adding a signage requirement for SMA major permits or variances, anything that had a public hearing, not just every exemption or minor, because that would be thousands, but any type of SM1 major. We have similar signage requirements for our B&B and STRH ordinances, and we have seen some other islands do have that. So I think the working group could come up with some language, and we could potentially add that into the rules and have that before you. I don't think that's going to be like a sticking point. I think people both feel comfortable with just having a sign up, letting people know with a permit number and a contact number.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Okay, we will do a roll call vote. Director?
Sorry, can I discussion?
Yeah, go ahead.
There's not really anything to vote. I don't know what the existing rules are today, so I don't think there's anything to vote to accept anyway. I do want to highlight one of my biggest concerns. You know, I think the reference to the erosion hazard line is a huge inconvenience for many property owners, and that's why there's a lot of resistance to it. It's not good when you're selling properties and all of that. So to not have that in the rules is something I think a lot of people would be happy not to see. Now, that doesn't meet the criteria of the purpose of the SMA rules. So my concern is, with a hard deadline of February 7th, if we don't accept and that's it, it goes away, then, so there may be a lot of reason to make sure that we're not successful on the 7th. So that's my concern, but I will be voting, for the deferral.
The rules are up to us, so if we're not happy, if there isn't a section in there, or if there's a section that is bothersome or not complete, then that's when you step up and say, I want to look at this, and then we have the final say. So.
Right, but if we don't agree to accept whatever is the end point and the meeting is closed, then that is shelved, is it not?
Well, they just, hopefully it will be complete. They've made lots of notes, and there have been recordings, and there are transcripts that people can go over. So I think that the commission's voices have been loud and clearly.
Okay.
So, but thank you for that. Commissioner Polly?
Yeah, I just want to say too, like, we're all not going to agree on every single item, just as the working group is not all agreeing. And majority will rule. So we can't forget that. It will not be tabled because one person doesn't like one section. The majority that agree on the revisions or to not continue to revise, it could still carry. And I just don't want that point to be missed. And so it's really important. And just to be fair, to go back to the last meeting, I believe this last meeting was deferred because we couldn't get a majority. I think we were at a wash. And so, ultimately the majority will win. And just since the move on, I'd like to just state that I think originally I was conflicted with, kicking the can. I really actually wanted to see something pass quickly, but I didn't want to be hasty. And because the community came up and because there was such loud voices and majority voices said, hey, we need more time, we need more time. I think that was the only reason why I was okay with the deferral. Now, today I hear the environmental supervisor saying, hey, we actually do need more time. And then all the testifiers again saying we need more time. That is the reason why I'm okay with more time. But otherwise, like you, Chair, I do want to see this passed so we can start to mitigate and to plan for the future.
Thank you, Vice Chair Polly. As the second, have you discussion, Mr. Thompson?
Yes. We're kind of past, we're in the home stretch, and I think we're past the analysis paralysis part. So, it's whatever, narrowed down to a small amount. I think we're going to get it done. I feel confident.
Commissioner Poe, you have anything to add?
It's all new to me, so yeah, I'm trying my best to catch up with everything for the past couple of weeks, but please bear with me. Thank you.
It's nice having you here. Thank you. So my recommendation, before we do the vote, I'm going to do this discussion part. My recommendation is that everybody get together and hash this out so that you don't have to be scolded by me because I'm done with this. I have this gavel and I'm going to use it. So anyway. So please work together and get this done. So our red line version that is presented, as Commissioner Polly has said, so that we all know the changes, because I have 3 renditions here. It would be most helpful. And obviously the sooner we can get it, the better, so we can review and kick it around. So I will get off my soapbox now. And if there is no further discussion, then Director.
All right. Vice Chair Polly, we're voting.
Aye. Yes, aye.
Mahalo. Commissioner Freitas?
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson?
Aye.
Commissioner Hippolito?
Aye.
Commissioner Thayer?
Aye.
Dr. Dikos?
Aye.
Commissioner Apo?
Aye.
And Commissioner Lindsay is excused. That is 7 ayes.
You forgot me.
And Commissioner Chair P. Denise Acosta.
I vote aye also. So thank you. So motion does pass to defer until February 7th. So ladies and gentlemen, please have your pencils sharp and your wits too. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thanks.
Chair.
Yes, sir,
Chair,
Mr.
just
Hopper.
a reminder, just to announce the time too. You said it at 11:30 a.m. Is that
That's
just
correct.
To make it clear for the public?
11:30 on
Thank you.
February the 7th.
And then an agenda will have to be posted for that anyway, so that's fine. But just thought we could announce that now. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. With that, Director, we'll go on to the next agenda item, please.
Next agenda item is the director's report. We have the SMA minor report. Again, this is for notification and review purposes. No action is required. Anybody has any questions?
Is there anyone in the audience who have any questions about anything that is posted on the director's report? Okay, go ahead, please, Director.
I'm not sure. Do you guys go over each one or no? Okay, that's good. Any questions, let us know. Number 2 is the SMA exemption report. Again, this is for notification and review. No action is required.
And again, thank you to the department for providing us with explanations. It's very helpful for that.
Great.
So ladies and gentlemen of the commission, I thank you so much for your volunteer time and your input. It's always eye-opening and helps us be knowledgeable. So thank you so much. I am adjourning the January 10th meeting of Maui Planning Commission.
I think they have radar.
Recording has stopped.
This was maybe a good first meeting for you.
That'll teach you. I was watching all the videos. She said